Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. It's time for Patron Week once again, and this month, at their behest, we'll be rounding out the roster of Sylvio with some wily weasels. Premiering in the February 2015 deck build pack, The Secret Forces, Yosenjus made up the third leg of the set, alongside the format-shattering Necros and the mind-twisting Ritual Beasts, rounding out this posse with a combination of Pendulum, a mechanic that involves too many special summons, and slapping on too many normal summons. So, if you're a Floo pilot, you're basically obligated to watch through this video as it's like learning your culture or something. And while Arc V's second best theater kid would return to his roots eventually and pick up Abyss actors, that hasn't stopped the fan base from adoring this Pendulum deck, and such loyalty has recently been rewarded with some pretty good support. So let's not keep our little rodents waiting. We'll chart the winds to see where they're going, find out how to harness the power of a storm, then see if there's any other support we can weasel in. It's time to get blown away with Yosenjus. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons and the fine people over at Dragon Shield. If you want to protect your cards with the strongest scales on the market that even come with their own lore while supporting the channel, use my affiliate link in the description. So what's the deal with Yosenjus? Well, they're a series of wind attribute monsters that are either Beast, Beast Warrior, or Rock. Trust me, it makes sense in context. That are all based on various creatures in Japanese mythology that revolve around wind. Mechanically, they have two main game plans: either string together a ton of normal summons to build up a huge board, get lots of effects, and do a lot of damage, or set up scales to special summon a whole bunch of monsters to a similar effect, with more modern strategies and support helping to bring those two disparate halves together. But no matter what you do, you won't get to keep them for long, as many of them will return to the hand during the end phase if summoned in a particular way, usually with the method that gets them the most value. This generally leaves you with an open field during your opponent's turn, which is one of the deck's biggest flaws, but that hasn't stopped him from using this obstacle to set up some mean counterplay. Let's start things off by covering our non-pendulums, specifically our Beast Warriors. Yosenju Kodam is a level 1 monster with 0 attack and defense, and you contribute this card, then target a Yosen training grounds you control to place 3 Yosen counters on it. You can also banish this card from your grave to give yourself an extra normal summon or set of a Yosenju monster during your main phase this turn. Training Grounds is a pretty nifty support card that we'll be getting into later on. However, the usefulness of this card is entirely dependent on if you play Yosen Training Grounds, because without a good way to vent Kodam into the grave, you're not netting yourself any extra normal summons, though you do have the option of banking it for later if you link this off with Linkuriboh. But honestly, it shouldn't even be dueling in the first place. Look at that, that's some severe irritation going on there. Who thought it was a good idea to give it contact lenses made of leaves? Next up, we have the 3 commas, Yosenju, 1, Yosenju, 2, and Yosenju, 3. Each one has an effect where, if normal summoned, you can immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a Yosenju monster from your hand, except one with the same name, but they're returned to the hand during the end phase of a turn they're normal summoned. But each one also has its own unique effect and stat line. 1 has 1600 attack and 500 defense, and if you control another Yosenju monster, you can target a face-up card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. And this can only be used once while face-up on the field, though notably doesn't have to be normal summoned to allow for this. 2 has 1800 attack and 200 defense and can attack directly. However, if you do so by this effect, the battle damage your opponent takes from this monster is halved. And 3 adds a Yosenju card from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card, if another Yosenju monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent. And you can only use that effect once per turn. So unfortunately, you can't deal battle damage with 3 Yosenjus and search 3 cards, nor get multiple searches off of having multiple 3s. So you can kind of see how this all spins together. By attacking directly with 2, 3 gets its effect to search, adding 1 into the mix if it's not already here to give you some bouncing removal. Or you can have 1 clear the way for damage so 3 can get you 2. And while you can't normal summon another copy of the same comma using this effect, they aren't once per turn. So the more varied comma names you have in hand, the more you can deploy, with it not being unheard of to get 4 or even 5 of these little goobers out in a single turn. Individually, they aren't much to speak of, but when they're together, you can always count on them. Yosenju Sujic is a level 4 monster with 1000 attack and 0 defense, and during the end phase is returned to the hand if it was normal summoned this turn. During either player's damage step, as a quick effect, when a Yosenju monster you control battles an opponent's monster, you can discard this card, and that monster you control gains 1000 attack until the end of the turn. And while on the field, it can target a Yosenju monster on the field and it gains 1000 attack until the end of the turn. Now, unlike the commas, this doesn't provide you with an extra normal summon, so you'll want to make sure this is the last monster in your normal summon sequence if possible. Giving an extra 1000 attack to comma 2 to make their direct attack more effective is no joke, and can even be used to run over anything at or below 2800 if it chooses to face something head on. And if you're not able to add Sujic into your normal summon lines, its helpful discard effect still has you covered. Also, is it just me, or does it look like they put a Nai from Agretzko in the samurai fit? Yosenju Izuna is a level 4 monster with 800 attack and 1200 defense that also returns to the hand during the end phase of the turn it was normal summoned. You can discard this card, and this turn, your opponent can't activate cards or effects when any number of Yosenju monsters are normal or special summoned. And while on the field, if you control another Yosenju monster, you can draw a card. Neat! This is the theme's magical meltdown, and is a very important inclusion since even a single piece of disruption can be devastating for us. And if you don't need it for that, you have a way of drawing deep into your deck to solidify your position. But whatever effect you use, it's very good at keeping your opponent on the ropes. Yosenju Sabu is a level 4 monster with 1700 attack and 400 defense, returns to the hand during the end phase of a turn it was normal summoned, and if normal summoned, if you control another Yosenju card, you can add a Yosenju Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. It can also target a Yosenju card you control to place a Dizzying Winds of Yosen Village or Yosen Whirlwind from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone, and if you do, shuffle the targeted card into the deck. Sabu doesn't have an in-hand effect like the other two, so it's highly dependent on the extra normal summon the commas give you, but you get an outrageous bang for your buck. Not only are our selection of Yosenju Pendulum monsters fantastic, the cards we can place on the field are also incredible. Bit of a spoiler here, but their activation conditions made those cards atrocious to play, but when you can cheat them out for free, they're kinda wild, especially since that part that shuffles a card back into your deck is a great way to take Yosenjus that are stranded on your field and get them off the board so you can access your other effects. And since you're able to target any Yosenju card, your spells and traps can be used for this as well. Sabu, you're a premium piece of support for a wonderful theme. I tip my Sandogasa to you. Alright, that does it for our Beast Warriors. Let's move on to our Beasts. Yosenju Magat is a level 6 monster with 2000 attack and 100 defense, and if this card is normal summoned, you can special summon a Yosenju monster from your deck except a copy of this card. And during the end phase, if this card was special summoned this turn, return it to the hand. So while this does require a tribute, you can use your extra normal summons from your commas to cover that. And while we can't summon another Magat using this effect, we do have other level 6s we can access to make rank 6s, which is one of the last things I expected to say when I was making this video. But the thing I like most is that Magat looks like they're really excited to show you the sword they just picked up at an anime convention. It's great. Yosenju Misak is a level 6 monster with 2300 attack and 200 defense, and at the start of the damage step, if this card battles a face-up non-wind monster, you can destroy that monster. When this card is pendulum summoned, you can target a card your opponent controls and destroy it, and during the end phase, if this card was special summoned this turn, return it to the hand. This means that you can pendulum summon this each turn to get a free piece of spot removal that hits anything, which is pretty wild. It's also a wind-flavored version of Ally of Justice Catastrophe, except this effect is better because it's optional, so you don't have to miss out on doing any life point damage you might have otherwise done. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but there are a lot less wind monsters in the game than darks, so you've got a lot of options to choose from when it comes to blasting. And in a great piece of parallel art, Misak looks like they're trying to keep you away from their giant anime sword. Great attention to detail. Yosenju Oyam is a level 6 monster with question mark attack and defense, and when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack, you can send a Yosenju monster from your hand to the grave, except a copy of this card, to special summon this card from your hand. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's face-up monster, you can make this card's attack and defense become equal to the original attack of the opponent's monster it's battling until the end of the turn. And when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can add a Yosenju card from your deck to your hand. This is a pretty nifty block locker for the theme, especially since your board is usually going to be empty when your opponent attacks. But when you summon it in defense position, you basically make a monster that can't be beaten in battle, since its defense will always be enough to make the opponent's attacks glance off it, and you can summon it in attack position to force a crash, unless their attack stat is modified to be higher than their original, in which case it's not defending against anything. Though if that's not the case, you could summon this in defense position to weather an assault, then turn it to attack position on your turn and crash into the biggest value target. And with the search effect, it's basically like you discarded a Yosenju to get another one. But that's all assuming the kind of best conditions. Since it doesn't force the attacking monster into damage calculation when summoned, your opponent can just choose not to engage. And if they remove Oyam with an effect and not battle, you don't get the float, causing you to lose a ton of card advantage in the process. It's a great card in theory, but not so great in practice, which is a shame because this is another banger monster design. Just a mountain with dinky little arms. Looks like they're worried about its future prospects. I vibe with Oyam. Alright, that does it for our regular main deck monsters. Now it's time to spice things up with the Pendulums. Yosenju Shinshu L is a level 4 rock monster with 0 attack and 2100 defense with a scale of 3. As a pendulum spell, if any number of Yosenju monsters would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can destroy this card instead. As a monster, if this card is normal summoned, change it to defense position, and your opponent can't target Yosenju monsters you control with card effects, except this one. This card is going to be a bit of a problem for several of our effects, since this card doesn't get bounced back to the hand automatically, but the targeting protection is a huge benefit. Not to mention you get the destruction protection while in the scales. And while you'd probably want to pendulum summon this more often than not, having the Summoner Monk change to defense position effect does let you normal summon this and get the protection out of it without risking it getting run over by basically anything, letting you avoid the common Shinshu L. Yosenju Shinshu R is a level 4 rock monster with 0 attack and 2100 defense with a scale of 5. As a pendulum spell, once per turn, if you have a Yosenju card in your other pendulum zone, you can make this card's pendulum scale become 11 until the end of this turn. Also, you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Yosenju monsters, even if this card leaves the field. As a monster, it also changes to defense position when normal summoned, and keeps your opponent from targeting face-up Yosenju monsters for attacks, except this card. Notably, this attack redirection does have the capacity to cause an attack lock if you put 2 of these on the board, but the real important part is the scale increasing effect, which causes a pretty interesting choice. Either you boost the scales to pendulum summon your larger Yosenjus, the best ones we haven't even seen yet, or keep the scales narrow, meaning you can only pendulum summon level 4s, but maintain access to the rank 4 toolbox. And before you say that Yosenjus can already do that since you can normal summon like 28 of them in a single turn, it's also meant to help with the Plunder Patrol synergies. You know, because it's Shinshu Arrrrrrr. My Yosenju Dieback is a level 10 beast monster with 3000 attack and 300 defense and a scale of 7. As a pendulum spell, when a Yosenju monster you control declares an attack, you can have that attacking monster gain 300 attack until the end of the battle phase. As a monster, it can't be special summoned, except by pendulum summoning, so no cheating it out with Magat. This card's pendulum summon can't be negated, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can target up to 2 cards on the field and return them to the hand. And once per turn during the end phase, if this card was special summoned this turn, return it to the hand. This is one of your big payoffs, and it's not hard to see why. It's big, hard to stop, and removes 2 unwanted cards from the field. It can even bounce your own cards if you want to recycle some effects, or like Sabu, scoop up some stranded Yosenjus. Its scale is also pretty good for summoning Magat and Misok without having to Yosenju lock yourself. And while it's not a lot, having the little extra attack boost, especially across so many monsters, can really make a difference. And what auspicious timing! The Hungry Burger deck just got a pendulum monster, so what would go better on your big evil warrior burger than some Mayo Senju? My Yosenju Hitot is a level 10 beast monster with 2000 attack and 3000 defense with a scale of 3. As a pendulum spell, you can target a Yosenju card in your pendulum zone, and for the rest of the turn, its pendulum scale becomes 11. Also, you can't special summon monsters except Yosenjus, even if this card leaves the field for the rest of the turn. And during the end phase, return this card to the hand. As a monster, it also can't be special summoned except by pendulum summoning, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. And each time any number of cards on the field are returned to the hand or main deck by your card effect while this card is in your grave, all Yosenju monsters you currently control gain 500 attack. And it also returns to the hand during the end phase of a turn this card was special summoned. Okay, now this is a finisher if I've ever seen one. Not only does its pendulum effect ensure you have redundancy in your high and low scales, this pairs very well with dieback to close things out. If you pendulum summon both and you bounce 3, that's an additional 2,000 points of damage added to your board, 500 for each effect that bounces, for 1,000 to each monster. That's 7,000 damage right there, so if you have literally any other Yosenju alongside it, that's game. And alongside some cards from another archetype we'll get into in the tech pick section, this is now scarily consistent. And they certainly aren't going to wait and give you time to defend yourself, because the damage output on these monsters is too heat-hot to trot. Alright, that does it for the monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps. Yosenju Orochi Channeling is a normal spell card that you can activate if you control no monsters. You can choose from either one of 2 effects, but puts you under the Yosenju special summon lock for the rest of the turn. Either add a level 5 or higher Yosenju monster from your deck to your hand, or place a Yosenju Shinshu L and R from your deck into your pendulum zones, but destroy them during your opponent's next end phase. Hey, a 1-card pendulum scale, that's neat. It even lets you keep them until the end of the next turn, so L's protection effect stays online. If you already have Heatot and Dieback ready to go, this can be lethal on the spot, and if you don't have them, this also lets you search them out, or even get you Misak or Magat if you ever feel like channeling your inner gremlin. Yosenju Wind Worship is a quick play spell card that you can activate if you control 3 or more Yosenju monster cards with different names. Return as many Yosenju monster cards you control as possible to the hand, then you can draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. This is pretty odd. It's another tool you can use to get stranded Yosenjus back into your hand, as well as getting back your pendulum scales, because this returns monster cards, not just monsters. Meaning that those Shinshus that are going to be destroyed by Orochi channeling don't necessarily have to be. And honestly, it really should be thought of as a recovery tool for this instance alone, because that draw effect is not going to get you consistent advantage. Like, without any fancy tricks, if you have 3 Yosenju monster cards on board and no other cards in hand, this is a draw too. But with you only having 3 back row slots to set cards out of your hand if you facilitate your pendulum scales, we don't always have the capability to empty our hand out to make room for these new draws. Now, there are some silly things where you can activate this card once you've met the condition, and then find a way to destroy or send to grave your Yosenju card so you only have 1 left. Then resolve the effect as normal, and since you returned less cards, you draw more. But that's a lot of hoops to jump through just for some draws. Wind Worship, more like Wind Worship. Got him. Yosenju Training Grounds is a continuous spell card, and each time any number of Yosenju monsters are normal or special summoned, place a Yosen counter on this card. This means you can get a lot of counters for big normal summon chains, but only 1 counter per pendulum summon. You can remove any number of Yosen counters from this card to apply an effect depending on the number of Yosen counters removed, but you can only do this once per turn. You either remove a counter to give all Yosenju monsters you currently control a 300 attack boost until the end of the turn, even if this card leaves the field, or remove 3 counters to add a Yosenju card from your deck or grave to your hand. So while this is no Gateway of the 6, it's still a decent card, though it does have its fair share of flaws. Having its 3 counter effect be the one that searches you a card is a little late, since if you're activating this consistently and summoning 3 or more Yosenjus in a turn, you might not need the extra help. The attack boost isn't terrible, but since we're spending a counter, couldn't they have sprung for a bit more power than what Dieback gives? Alternatively, if you have access to this and Kodam, you can normal summon it, tribute it to get you 3 counters on Training Ground, get the search, then banish Kodam to normal summon the searched monster, if possible, to get the ball rolling. It's not a terrible combo, but is leagues behind what you could be doing otherwise. But hey, you rarely get it right the first time, that's why you have to get so many counters, because practice makes perfect. Yosen Whirlwind is a continuous spell card that you can activate by paying 800 life points. Once per turn, if a face-up Yosenju monster you control returns to the hand, except during the damage step, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. And during your end phase, unless this effect was activated this turn and was not negated, you destroyed this card. Yeah, you have to pay a 10th of your starting life total just for the privilege of using this effect eventually. This is why it's so good that Sabu can just place this on the board. Because yeah, now you can bounce a card in response to your monster's bouncing, helping to set the opponent back a bit whenever you have to reset your own field. It's just a shame that it's limited to once per turn, so even if you have to return 2 or 3 monsters, you're only ever getting 1 bounce. And you don't really want to be filling up your back row with these. Also, can we stop menacing the horses? What did they ever do to you? Yosenju's Sword Sting is a normal trap card that you can only activate if you control no monsters. You reveal up to 2 Yosenju monsters with different names in your hand, then target the same number of face-up cards your opponent controls and return them to the hand. This is a fantastic card to keep your opponent from overwhelming you during this turn. You're not even spending any cards, it basically just asks you to prove you're playing Yosenjus, and you get a double compulse. And because it says up to, your opponent can't just stiff you on targets by only playing with a single card face up. My only problem is that it only hits face up cards, so you're not able to snipe any back row your opponent sets during the end phase to deprive them of answers. It does sting a bit, but it's still fantastic. Yosenju's Secret Move is a counter trap card that you can activate when a spell card, trap card, or monster effect is activated while you control at least one Yosenju card. And all face-up monsters you control are Yosenju monsters. Negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. That's right, this deck has an Omni Negate. How do you like that? You do need to actually control a Yosenju card, but your pendulums can help with that requirement quite nicely. And despite the wording, you don't actually have to control any monsters to use this. You just have to make sure that all of your face-up ones are Yosenjus, which is a pretty easy ask. But with everything having an Omni Negate nowadays, I don't think this move remained a secret for very long. Dizzying Winds of the Yosen Village is a continuous trap card that you can only activate if you control a level 6 or higher Yosenju monster. While you have a Yosenju card in your pendulum zone, if a monster would be returned from the field to the hand by a card effect, shuffle it into the deck instead, unless it's a Yosenju monster. Now, previously, having to field a monster as big as Dieback or Misog just to get this card face up in the first place was more of an annoyance than an asset. But with Sabu around, we've got an easy way to access it and get it active, turning any of our bounce effects into some permanent removal, since shuffling cards into the deck is one of the most permanent ways to get rid of a card. And this applies to all effects, not just your Yosenjus, so we can turn Compulsory Evacuation Device into some mean spot removal. In fact, the glow up you can get with some of these effects is dizzying. Alright, that's all the Yosenju cards, but what do we do with them? Well, despite early card design leaning towards a control strategy, asking you to weather a number of turns where your shields are down and rewarding you with a nifty advantage engine and a monster lineup that doesn't really lose to battle. But since then, we've basically pivoted over to beatdown with the release of some absurd support, so our main focus should be to deploy Dieback and Hitot as soon as possible to wrap up the game. So what can we play to help them out? Well, the best way we can facilitate our OTK is with Dream Tower of Princess Nemlyria. That deck has a few level 10 beasts in it, and this card is meant to search them, but they forgot to staple on an attribute restrictor to it. So now we can use it to grab Hitot and Dieback, basically for free. You can even run copies of Dreaming Nemlyria, which searches this card out, as well as a spell that searches Nemlyria, giving you upwards of 9 copies of Dream Tower that you can play. And outside that, they're just a scale 8 in case you need it. While we can access the entire rank 4 toolbox if need be, as a wind deck, we have special access to Lightning Chidori. We get to tuck a set card our opponent controls on summon, and we get 2 turns of spinning a face-up card they control to the top of their deck, a fantastic piece of removal. One problem our deck has is that it's reliant on multiple card combos. While Orochi is a 1-card scale, it doesn't do anything past that on its own, so we need to make sure we're gathering as many cards as possible to pull off our win condition. And thankfully, as a theme that doesn't rely on its extra deck, Pot of Extravagance is here to fill up your hand or bait Ash Blossom. On a similar note, this puts us in a great position to run Dogmatica Punishment, utilizing such strong extra deck options as Intis or Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. Though if you mix this with Extravagance, you might find yourself missing a particular copy every once in a while. Divine Wind of Mist Valley is an option if you're trying to do something a bit silly, as it'll give you a special summon when your Yosenjus return to the hand. While you can't use Sword Sting in this scenario, you can still use Secret Move if the monster you summon is another Yosenju. Speaking of which, Fire Formation Tenki basically acts as additional copies of all of our level 4 and lower monsters, making it easier to set up your normal summon chains, as well as readying any of the discard effects. Win the Wind Channeler is an excellent searcher for the deck, especially because you only have 4 you can't search. Oyam, because it has question mark attack, Hitot, because it's thick, and both the Shinshu gates. But aside from that, Wind can cycle you into any Yosenju you need, as well as any other appropriate wind monster in your deck if need be. As for a silly tech pick, another cousin to the whole return to the hand after being normal summoned idea are spirit monsters, and we've even got one that lines up with the wind theming Shinobirds. Power Spot won't give our Yosenjus a boost, but they will trigger its search effect, and our level 4 monsters make prime fodder for ritual summoning. And a great way to ensure that your opponent doesn't have any interaction to mess with your Yosenju lines is to use the Shinobarons to sweep it all away before going in for the OTK. And that's all I have to say about Yosenjus. This deck is super neat, and with the release of Dreaming Tower, I wouldn't be surprised to see this at your locals as a sleeper rogue pick. I've certainly been on the receiving end of more than a few Heat-Tot-driven beatdowns, and I can attest that once they get in the air, it's hard to ground them. They've really made a huge improvement recently, so I've really got to return to the hand it to them. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Yosenjus getting that good medicine after they've knocked down and cut up the competition, or are their lines of play just not blowing you away? And which one is your favorite? I like Kama 3's pose myself, it's probably the funkiest of the group. Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. When you want to protect your cards with the power of dragon scales, get some sweet lore for them, and support the channel, check out my link in the description to get started. Today's episode was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Green Knight, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Andrew Newman, A Random Pup, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Danny Bound, Divine Dragon Felgrand 4123, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iskander 711, John, Jordan, Julius Sneezer, Mana Charge, Marluxia's a Girl, Nathan Vig, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Sir Knight JCB, Skybuster Leo, Sophie, apparently, the Fresh Prince of Con Air, the Wizard Moose and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Almento 5010, Ariel Kersey, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Beluga Masta, Blue Gem, Chaz Ghost, Chris Kessler, Drachenwald, Emony, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, In the House Like Carpet, Inblink, Gesture Designs, Kale the Dragon, Carp, Kevon Public, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Matt Simmons, Mega Combi, Michael Shimabukuro, Nadia McCarthy, Nitromo, Ruxith Sarani, Shizuki Nijimura, Star-Lord 777, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, Tucker Ordorn, and Zaldreka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to be a part of these credits, get my videos early, join in on the monthly custom card review stream, and, of course, support the channel, please consider checking out the link to my Patreon in the description or becoming a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see a video about those stupendous Shinobirds, I've got a video about them right here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.